I'm Thomas. I've been a software developer since I was a 12-year-old child. In the last 4 years, I was the CEO of GitHub until August 2025. And now I'm back to being a startup founder, and I'm also an advisor to Apiiro. With the invention of AI agents, starting with GitHub Copilot in 2021, ChatGPT, chat, all the way to Cloud Code and other agents now in 2026, we see a rapid rise of code being generated by these agents. In fact, if you look at statistics, you see that some developers are able to generate up to 10 times as much code as they would if they were writing the code all by themselves. We're creating new challenges. On the one side, we have all the excitement, the passion, the fun that those agents bring back to coding, because you're no longer stuck trying to figure out the solution. You're much more in a flow state, using your ideas and with the help of agents, converting these ideas into reality. On the other side, more and more code needs to be reviewed. As a developer, I no longer have all the context of that code as what was written by a set of agents. Often it's no longer just one agent, it's multiple agents. And Apiiro provides a unique solution because it, on the one side, understands the graph architecture and how all that software works together. And so it complements the functionality of the model that has a large training set and understands a lot about the world. And Apiiro understands my code base, my company knowledge, the way I'm designing software. And so it's great. I love the technology in combination with all these AI agents because it helps me to have confidence that the code I'm shipping doesn't introduce new security vulnerabilities. And it also helps me by writing the code, preventing those mistakes in the first place. The biggest impact on the productivity side is that you will see developers taking ideas into reality much, much faster than before. And we have seen this for a while now in little prototypes that you can build really, really fast with the help of AI agents. And so vibe coding these tools is so easy now that we will see more and more automation happening in the developer workflow. And of course, these tools all need to comply with enterprise security, privacy, compliance, all these kind of things. On the other side, we will see developers more and more applying these AI agents to existing code bases. And that means that the agent not only needs to have the world knowledge that is baked into the large language model like Claude Opus 4.5, but also it needs to know everything about the code base, about the security practices, about everything that makes a company or an enterprise the organization that they are. And when you come out of university, you learn all the basics as a developer, but then you join your first company and you realize not everything is like a professor explained it to or the professors explained it to you in university. There's all this other knowledge that lives within the company, the processes, the best practices, the learnings over the lifetime of the company. And Apiiro brings that information into the agentic software development process. And so the agent not only knows how to write code in Python, for example, it also knows how my company expects me to write code in Python and applies these practices for me to write better code and especially more secure code. If we look at security products that have been developed over the last decade or so, we had a movement called Shift Left, bringing the detection of security vulnerabilities from production further left into the software lifecycle. But oftentimes, even today, these so-called Shift Left tools are still just detection. They're finding a security vulnerability in code that was already written, and they're detecting them hopefully as part of the pull request review. So I'm not deploying that source code, or maybe it's part of my CI/CD workflow, the continuous integration, continuous deployment, filing new tickets against my already long backlog. Most developers are suffering from so much work, drowning in so much work, and they have to prioritize constantly between the backlog that is all the innovations, the feature requests, the things that makes customers happy, or the things that make me as a developer happy, and all the security findings, compliance, privacy, local regulations, federal regulations, all these kind of things. It's really hard to balance those two things because they're ever growing stacks of work. And so building security tools that just detect more work for me is not the solution. And the Guardian agent flips that on its head. And instead of detection, it prevents security vulnerabilities in the first place. And so what I'm using my agent, say GitHub Copilot, and I'm prompting it to help to build me a feature, the Guardian agents look at my prompt and extends that prompt by secure best practices. It extends it by the knowledge about my code base, the object graph. And as such, the agent that then writes the code has all that information available, builds better code than I would without the Guardian agent or with just a coding agent. And so it's a win-win for the two sides of a company. The security team wants to have less security issues that ship into production, but also want to have an overview of what risk they are managing within the installed code base. The number of repositories, the number of builds, containers, the agents that I'm using or the agents that I'm building, MCP servers, all those kind of things. Even if they are fully clean of security vulnerabilities, there's always the risk that the next morning there is a new, previously not known security vulnerability, for example, a zero-day exploit. And as such, the security team benefits because it has all that overview, the inventory and the risk management of the software that I'm shipping as a company. And the engineering team wants to build innovation, and they don't want to spend a lot of time on fixing issues that the security team has found. And so as such, using Guardian Agent and Apiiro as a platform actually helps them to be more productive, more innovative, and ultimately, and I think that's really important, more happy. Happy developers are the best developers, and they're changing the world. These agents and all the software that exists in the world today was built by humans in the first place. And as such, the human is still in the driver's seat, the pilot, if you will, with all these agents as their co-pilot. And I don't believe that we're anywhere near where AI can innovate by itself. It can become sentient and figure out what to build by itself without any human input. And there's a spectrum in the middle where what will certainly happen is that it can look at my existing software and identify issues it can solve by itself. Security issues is one such example. As we already know, patterns of how these security issues are defined or variants of these known security issues, and finding kind of like a different version of that issue in my code base. Or it can look at my backlog and start burning down these issues. But again, at some point, the human will come into that life cycle and decide, is that actually what I want to ship as an organization, as a project, as an enterprise? I believe 2026 is the year where we see transformation of software developers spending most of their time writing code to spending most of their time orchestrating a group of agents, effectively becoming the manager of these agents. That doesn't mean that the developer no longer has to understand code in the same way that a manager needs to understand what human developers are doing for them. But it will mean that we're much more transforming into how do I orchestrate these 10 or 12 or as many agents as you can put on your computer screen. How can I unblock them when they run into issues? And how can I then not create a new bottleneck that I have to review all that source code that was generated by those agents? And as such, solutions that we're building here at Apiiro are going to become an ever-increasing part of that life cycle to make sure not only have I all these agents that can generate so much code, but I also have a Guardian agent that help me to make sure that the code is shipping in a secure way.